One of the things I love about the Hunger Games is the creativity, how each arena is different. And each game you can expect to see something different, learn about a different arena. And that's what we're going to look at today. Now, the arenas we're going to look at are ones that have been mentioned in the books. And I'm going to actually talk about them in the order we find out about them. So there is going to be a little bit of information from Sunrise and the Reaping as well in there. So just a little, I guess, spoiler alert. If you didn't want to know about what Haymitch had to face, maybe skip over that part. But let's get into it. So, we obviously know in the first games that Katniss gets reaped in. It is the 74th Hunger Games. And we know it's a large outdoor arena. It's got forests and meadow, it's got a lake, streams, and lots of rocky areas. There are some hazards there. So you've got the tracker jackers, which are the modified wasps. You have the mutations, so those mutated like wolf type things are in there as well. You have the extreme weather, so it can be really hot or it can be really just raining all the time. So dehydration as well is a big factor that could happen in that arena, especially with the extreme temperature changes. So this arena was designed to be realistic, it's meant to be rugged, and in my mind confusing as well. It was meant to test survival skills, it was meant to encourage alliances and betrayals. There were lots of places to hide, lots of ways to forage as well if you knew what you were foraging, but like I said as well, lots of places to hide. You had lots of trees, bushes and things like that to hide in. So this one really was a test of survival skills, not just keeping alive someone killing you, but also how you would keep yourself alive by, in the way of getting water, food, shelter, that type of thing. That then brings us on to the Quarter Quell, which is the 75th Hunger Games, and that is the second games that Katniss and Peeta go into. This was a different design. This was a circular arena, a tropical island if you like, divided into 12 areas like a clock. And each area had a different hazard, so in these particular hazards were poison fog, blood rain, Jabberjay, so we know that they mimic Primrose and also Annie's voices as well, so they were really sent to confuse you and upset you as well, and I think really make you drop your guard and forget about your senses and where you were and your purpose of trying to survive. There were screams, there were beast mats, there was the lightning, and obviously the arena spun as well, so there was so much going on in this arena. It was absolutely insane. So this, we know, was to actually push former victors, it was to heighten the stakes, it was meant to be more complex, more torturous, and like I said, more confusing. I think it was meant to really, I guess, if it was me as a creator, if the tribute was in a certain area and say the blood rain started coming down or Jabberjays were coming and sort of tormenting them, I'd want them to run into the next area and then they'd wait and then the torment would start again. Obviously Katniss and everyone figured out that this was like a clock, so it was timed and then it started spinning, so they got all confused. So that was again quite a clever little thing that they could, if the victors, or tribute should I say, did figure it out, then they could spin the whole system, make it very confusing, and then they wouldn't know where they were and they'd have to start again. Out of those two so far, I don't know which one I prefer. I really like the second one because, like I say, the stakes were higher, the environment was harsher, there was more there, I feel, that was probably to test them. And obviously everything else that was going on in the story makes it a lot more exciting anyway. So yeah, I think out of those two I do prefer the second arena. So in Catching Fire we hear about Haymitch's games as well. Now you actually obviously read about these in Sunrise on the Reaping, so although this is not the next book in the series, I am going to go through this because we heard about it first in Catching Fire. So the the arena that Haymitch was in had a volcano, but it also was like basically a tropical island. So there were flowers everywhere, there were meadows of bushes and flowers, there was a maze. But a lot of these flowers and berries were either toxic, or they were like, the berries were actually mutations as well. So you didn't really know anything. Nothing really seemed safe. The fruit was poisoned, you know, any of the food in the arena was poisoned. So you couldn't trust anything, and unfortunately some tributes did die because they didn't realise it was poison and they ate it. It was only really safe to eat the stuff that was in the cornucopia or the stuff that was sent to you by your sponsors. So the hazards, so there was deadly terrain, there were killer butterflies, ladybirds, the mutations in this were just crazy because they were be programmed to a particular tribute. So if one tribute annoyed or broke the rules, annoyed the game makers or broke the rules, then this mutation would go after just this one person. If other tributes were there, they couldn't pull them off, or they wouldn't also be targeted. It was actually quite brutal, and when you read it, it was very, very dark. There were hidden traps everywhere as well. Like I said, you think somewhere is safe and it really isn't. But also there were a lot of tributes. Instead of there being 2 tributes from each district to be 24 tributes, there was actually 48. So there was so many people in there. So, you know, I think in the first day something like 18 of them died, but that still left quite a lot of them. So yeah, the odds weren't really in their favour, even less so than normal with the amount of people that were actually in the arena. So obviously it's meant to be celebratory, the arena. It's meant to, you know, teach the districts, or put them in their place after what happened, so that this rebellions didn't happen again. But this particular arena was designed to be beautiful, so you would think that you're in a lovely area. I remember reading that Haymitch was, he didn't get off the podium straight away when the I think it's like a gong that goes to say you can get off and nothing bad will happen. No one moved. And then he kind of snapped out of it because he realised this smell was what was captivating and keeping him there. But it's deadly. The whole arena, like all the others, is deadly. But this one seemed to be more so, which confuses me in a way, because the later ones weren't as brutal as what happened in these games. So you'd kind of expect, especially with snow at the helm, it'd be getting darker and darker and, you know, more and more twisted. But for whatever reason, Haymitch's arena wasn't so... Haymitch's arena was more so, should I say. Especially considering Katniss really annoyed Snow in the 75th, or she annoyed him in the 74th, should I say, and then he put it back in with the 75th. I would have thought he would have had more kind of out there for her, but it wasn't as bad as I feel Haymitch experienced. Now, one thing I am just going to throw in here, and this does come out of the most recent book, I'm just going to throw in here as we're talking about Haymitch, is Wiress. Her arena was mirrors. So it was literally just mirrors everywhere, floor to ceiling of mirrors. You don't actually know too much more about it. I have tried to look into it, and unless I'm looking in the wrong places, I can't really find out too much. But she had a mirror arena, and she was, the way that she survived, and people think that she cheated in the book, I'm not saying outside, but in the book there's this sense that actually she cheated, she didn't deserve to win, was that she found a gap between the mirrors and she hid, and she stayed the entire time, her time in the arena, in this little gap. It was so hard to find her that the sponsors couldn't get things delivered to her because they didn't quite know where to pinpoint and drop the balloons. It came down to her and another tribute being left over, and what happened was, I think that tribute went insane and he threw his axe at a mirror and it rebounded and hit him. See, this is very, you don't get a lot of information, so I'm just trying to recall this from like the early pages of the book, so I think that's right. but that would be an amazing arena just to get a flashback of in Sunrise and Reaping. I really hope we get a little flashback of that, because I think that'll be really cool to see. So the last one we're going to look at is mentioned in Ballad of Sunbirds and Snakes, and this is the one that Lucy Gray goes into, which I think is the 10th Hunger Games. So the design here, so this is very early on, it's more rudimentary, very basic. There's no technological advances at this point. It's basically like a zoo, or like an amphitheatre or something like that. Now, I did read the book a little while ago, so forgive me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think there are any what you'd call necessarily mutts as such, but I know that the snakes that were dropped in, that Snow tried to stop them from attacking Lucy Gray in a certain way. I know there were snakes, but I think they were live. I can't remember them being mutations, but I'm happy to be corrected if I'm wrong. Like I said, it wasn't as spectacular, so the hazards weren't as complex as the later games, which makes sense because of the advance in technology. It was more on brutal survival, spectacle. It was more to make a mockery of the districts than actual kind of all-out entertainment, get your popcorn type thing. This was just kind of like a punishment, it feels like to me, in my opinion. And the purpose of this game was that it was early in the history, so it focused more on public execution. They didn't really care about the elaborate storytelling at that point, but they wanted these districts to be humiliated and punished, and this was the way they did it. It was for everyone to watch, which, you know, like I said, it was very basic. So there are common features across the arenas, or, well, not the early ones, but definitely the later ones. So for one, you've got the cornucopia, so that's always at the centre, and you've got the weapons, you've got the food, you've got supplies, gear, and that tends to be, you know, someone, like we've seen in the 74th, someone kind of guards it, looks after it, and tries to stop people coming and taking what is left. You have capital control. Now that is just a theme throughout all of the books in their entirety. So they will manipulate the arena. They will trigger fires, floods, mutts, and all other hazards that you can think of. They will bring in new rules. They'll then take out those rules when you think, oh, there's two of us left, we could now win, we're the only two left. They go, oh no, wait, no, that's not a rule anymore. So they really manipulate the games to work in their favour. Obviously they have their favourites, so they're going to try and make the games work to how they want the outcome to be. So the tributes are constantly under surveillance. You've got the drones that drop the food in, you've got the cameras everywhere, you've got the cannons that obviously say who's passed away, and the ships that come and take those bodies away. So there is constantly some form of surveillance going on. They're never alone at this point. There's nothing I don't think they can ever do which isn't seen by the capital and the districts as well. And the last thing, especially from the 74th onwards, I guess as well actually I should say from the 50th onwards, because we do know that definitely happened in Haymitch's games, is the artificial elements. So you've got the artificial weather, animals, plants, the natural disasters as well. So there's a volcano that explodes, there is the thunder that hits the tree, or the lightning that hits the tree. So all of this is manufactured and controlled for entertainment, and I think also scare tactics as well. And potentially, I mean, you could just say I'm being cynical here, but potentially if the game makers think the game's going on for too long, it's a good way to maybe speed things up. If you can take out a few tributes with a volcano, maybe that's what they want to do. But that's everything for this video, guys. I find the tributes and the arenas themselves so interesting. I just wanted to make a video about the different types and really highlight how they are changing. I wouldn't necessarily say evolving, because it does feel as though Haymitch's arena was really evolved and we didn't get as much of the same later on, but that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think. Tell me what your favourite arena was, and what you hope that we will see in the future. If there are any more books, what other arenas you think will be really cool to see, and what other characters you want to know from the perspective of. But until next time guys, you take care.